Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, and this promises to be a very newsy, very data-driven edition of Inside the Birds. We've got a lot of information. Of course, the Eagles have now hired agreed to hire a new head coach. It'll be Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. And Adam, we did that live stream on Thursday, so I hope everybody had a chance to get our initial thoughts on the hire as it happened Thursday. I think we did it about 3 o'clock, but now we get a chance to expand on it a little more, explain what we've learned, talk to some sources. But to really start this off, I mean, obviously when the Eagles fired Doug Peterson on January 11th, which is more than 10 days ago, you and I were not mentioning the name immediately of Nick Sirianni. That was not the top 3, 4, or 5 guys that were on the list. So a very interesting hire, to say the least, in that regard.
Yeah, look, it's certainly, and we'll get into it, garnered interesting reaction from around the National Football League. I talked to coaches, executives on Thursday afternoon. I'm certainly surprised that he got the job. He only had the one interview. And in fact, it's so rare. I was talking to Joe Banner about that over this week, about second interviews. He goes, it's extremely rare for in a coaching search that they don't do 2 interviews, even though this one was long. In fact, Joe told me that with Andy Reid, not only did he have 2 with Andy Reid, I think he said there was consideration of doing a 3rd back then in 1999. So this is certainly rare. And it's not like they were in competition for him. As a matter of fact, it's really interesting when you look at Nick Sirianni, who agreed to be a head coach for this team. Doug Peterson, okay, no other team interviewed him. Nick Sirianni, no other team interviewed him. Andy Reid in 1999, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think another team interviewed Andy Reid to be their head coach.
No, I don't think they did.
I mean, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that because, as you also mentioned, there's a lot of mixed reaction. Mm-hmm. And I think, as we said in the live stream, if you hate the hire, I'm not going to bash you. If you love the hire, I'm not going to bash you. The reality is we just don't know. You find this with the rising offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. Sometimes you hit like a Sean McVay, right? And you're so happy with what you got. Sometimes you get an Adam Gase or you get a guy who's just not a good fit. So right. It's impossible for you and I. If people are hoping in this podcast that you and I are going to make some kind of declarative statement of this being a great hire or a terrible hire, you're not getting that here. Sure. We'll just get that straight off the bat. But you bring up the fact that I think a lot of people who are optimistic about the hire will cling to fairly, is that Jeffery Lurie's hires in the past have been unorthodox, like an Andy Reid, like a Doug Peterson, and of course now like a Nick Sirianni, but they tend to work out. They at least worked out with Andy and Doug. I still struggle with the whole story of Doug Peterson as the head coach. He won a Super Bowl and went to the playoffs 3 times, right? Normally, ordinarily, you would say successful hire. He won. What else could you ask for? It is. Yeah. But ordinarily, you would say a coach who only lasts 5 years at any particular point and gets fired was not a good hire. So I don't know. I don't know what that means for the future of Nick Sirianni. I really don't.
Well, look, it is interesting. You're right, because when is the last time a guy made the playoffs 3 straight years, only misses once out of the 4 years, mm-hmm. and gets fired after that 4th year? Yes, I know. We're not talking. We're starting at 17 in this discussion. It's just so rare. But we've been over these reasons 100 times with our listeners. We don't even need to go back on that. Just listen to any show. If you're new to us, please listen to any of our last 15 shows. Before Peterson was fired, we outlined why the firing line was still there, despite all the other reporting that was out there. It's because you better put a good coaching staff together. And we're going to get into that, the offensive staff and our sources and what we've heard so far. But yeah, I've learned my lesson. I was completely wrong on Peterson. I was, nonplussed is the term I've used with Doug Peterson when they hired him in 2016. I know he wasn't even remotely close to the first choice or the second choice, but it turned out to be the right choice. And as Geoff just said, listen, you can feel any way you want. I know people want instant gratification. I get that. I totally get that, being a football fan. You want someone from a coaching tree, or you want someone from this tree. I got some stuff in here I was not aware about, talking to some coaches close to Sirianni, on Thursday. I didn't know. Yeah, I don't know the guy, so I met him twice at training camp. I just, I requested to talk to him after practice just to learn a little bit more about him, but I don't know him. But I wanted to learn more about him, so Geoff and I made calls on Thursday and Wednesday. Geoff and I, as we said on our in our emergency pod, we heard, or whatever you call it, ITB Live, we heard mid morning. It sounded like it was going to be Sirianni. I was shocked. I was like, really? What? And I was surprised that McDaniels didn't get it. Let's call it like it is. I was very surprised.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And remember, this thing started with the first phone call, as we know, went to Lincoln Riley. Right.
As you reported. Yeah. Go hang on. Enlighten our listeners. Doug Peterson's fired and take it from there. What happened later that day?
I mean, it had to be, within 2 hours, maybe 3 hours of Doug Peterson's firing, did they contact Lincoln Riley?
Wow.
So, and remember, it's not like that was, hi, we're the Eagles.
Right. They know him. I understand.
Yeah, of course. There's a relationship there. But I think that has led many fans to think that you started off with one guy, and then you got your process so late off the ground that you missed out on a couple of other guys. We'll talk about it. And then you had to kind of go back to a formula of finding the diamond in the rough guy. And that has worked for Jeffery. But I think it's also fair to say, how many times do you really think that is going to work? You must be, you almost have to say Jeffery must be really good at this unheralded thing, and hopefully he'll have to be good again, or you're going to be skeptical of it. And like you and I say, whatever reaction you got, you're
all good. Yeah.
To it.
Listen, and one thing, because if you look at these unorthodox hires, as you said, they've had success. I mean, Lurie and Banner together, and then obviously Lurie with Howie Roseman, they haven't had a dismal failure. They inherited Rich Kotite, folks. Let's get that clear. They didn't. In fact, Banner told a story. The agent. I guess Kotite wanted an extension. They said no. Thank God. But no, I mean Ray Rhodes. By the way, Ray Rhodes was from the Bill Walsh coaching tree. He had success. I mean, he did.
He was coach of the year.
The playoffs with him. I was at that game when they beat the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodney Peete, for Christ's sake, was Eagles quarterback. I think, if I'm correct.
I think you're right.
Yeah, with an unbelievable blowout against the Lions here, and whatever the hell, I don't know what year it was, but anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So look, you're right, Geoff. They've had a tremendous success with these coaches. Even Chip Kelly, folks, he didn't last 3 years, but they made the playoffs the first time. So again, they haven't hired a dud yet. You could say Chip was a dud, but they still made the playoffs and had a winning record 2 out of 3 years. So there's that. So I'm gonna trust Jeffery Lurie and his acumen in terms of interviewing people and feeling good about it and making a decision. We know there was between, as far as we learned over this week, Geoff and I think would agree, and we said it. I think anywhere we were broadcasting, whether it was on the 973 South Jersey, which you could hear us on all of our interviews on that station. By the way, we don't talk about this much, are on YouTube, so you can watch them there and listen to us. And Andrew Ducheco contributes for us. We did say, look, everything we've heard this week would suggest the guy who was in the clear lead for the first few days was Josh McDaniels. Mm-hmm. And then I keep saying Caserio. God damn it, not Nick Caserio, Nick Sirianni. I've done that 20 times today, for Christ's sake.
Well, I have a friend named Rick Sirianni, so I can already see that this is going to be. I'm probably going to have a Freudian slip about a million times.
You haven't done it yet, right? You haven't done it yet. Yeah. So Geoff, it's funny. So you all these interviews I'm doing, I'm just like, wait a minute. I called him Nick Caserio easily 20 times. Easily, and it's embarrassing. I go, no, I'm sorry. It's Nick Sirianni, not Nick Caserio. God damn it. And then Houston didn't even interview the guy. What's going on with that? But anyway, look, it's not the popular move with fans. I understand that. Geoff and I saw social media. There were some people at least did their homework, and instead of just yelling, they saw, oh, wow, he's worked with Rivers. He worked with Jacoby Brissett early in his career when Brissett had to step in for Luck. He worked with Luck. A bunch of quarterbacks over his career. He's a former receiver in college. He knows the receiver position just like Frank Reich does. Ian Reich coached receivers. They coach quarterbacks. We know they talked to other coaches last week. I know that they liked Arthur Smith a lot, and some other coaches. But Smith, I heard, did very well in his interview. But the Falcons made sure, just like the Chargers did, Geoff. The Chargers did not give the Eagles a chance to get the Brandon Staley. Smith had his interview. And then after his interview, the Falcons hired him. So They made sure he didn't get a second interview. That's just the way it goes. So
right.
Look, we saw in 16, Geoff, you know what happened with Ben McAdoo.
Yeah.
That one worked out well for the Eagles, thank goodness, right?
I know. Sometimes, again, Jeffrey has whatever you want to call it, lucked into it or been smart enough to, find the right guys at the right time. But I will say this, Adam, why I remain kind of ecumenical on it and neutral. And I think I could be more excited about things if situations were different. But as you and I have talked about, you don't go from being a Super Bowl champion and 3 trips to the playoffs 3 years in a row to 4 wins without having more than just one issue, right? We talked about the Carson Wentz issue. We talked about the Doug Peterson issue. We talked about Howie Roseman, Jeffery Lurie as issues, right? Well, 3 of those 4 could very possibly be back. We know 2 of those 4 are going to be back. And so, as I said in the live stream, and I've said many times, it's great that they can start fresh with Nick Sirianni, and it's great that they found their guy. Everybody's got to pull together and be on the same page for this thing to work, which is the truth of any organization. So you hope that going forward that would be the case.
Yeah, look, we first reported last week on one of our shows that where we were getting was that the coaching candidates were asked in the interviews, hey, listen, if you get to coach Carson Wentz, if you get our job here, a coaching job, how will you coach Wentz? What's your plan for him? And speaking to a couple coaching sources who were in touch with these guys, they were prepared for it. I don't know if they knew this was going to be asked, but this guy, I'm told, Sirianni, I didn't call him Casario again, but Sirianni knew this coming in. At least he was prepared for it. And I'm told his presentation was very good in terms of how he plans to coach quarterbacks, plan for Wentz, and so forth. When you're doing a complete rebuild of a quarterback, which this is, it's not a fixing, folks. It's a rebuild. There's no such thing as fixing. It's a rebuild. When you're as bad as Wentz was this season, you got to start from the footwork up. You got to get his confidence back. And my Colts source told me that Nick has a certain way. Nick, he has a certain way of reaching players, and that's a good thing because the former head coach could not reach Carson Wentz this season. That's a fact.
That's true.
And neither could the quarterbacks coach. So
right.
We'll get into the staff later in the show, but he definitely knows the challenges here with Carson Wentz. The person I spoke with said he's definitely aware of it. Mm-hmm. You'd have to be stupid not to know it anyway. I'm sure he read stuff, and obviously he knows Frank Reich. That's his mentor. That I put a quote from a coaching source which I was holding the whole day until he got named head coach. I didn't want to put it up there. He wasn't going to be the head coach, but Geoff and I had a pretty good idea mid-morning that this was going to happen. I'm like, all right, I'm going to hold this one and please be the coach because this is good shit. Mm-hmm. And I put it out there, and the guy said, look, stuff I didn't put out there, which I say for our show here, I'm just paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. Nick was extremely green when he got there in 18. Didn't know what he didn't know, which was quite a bit. By mid-season, he started feeling a little bit more comfortable with the job. Again, he wasn't calling plays, but as a non-play caller OC, you need to know what your role is and what your job is. And he started figuring out over time, and he did that. In his second year, he grew big time. In his third year, it was just like, okay. Because remember, he and Philip Rivers worked together instead of Frank Reich with the Chargers. Mm-hmm. A Colts source told me with Brissett, they did a great job of managing the passing game to help him because he was not supposed to be the starter for Andrew Luck, but you know what happened when Andrew didn't play and then when he also retired. And they did a great job with Philip Rivers managing the passing game, understanding where his arm strength was. It's called coaching, okay? You check your goddamn ego, and you go, this is what the guy can do. We're not going to ask him to do stuff that you can't do. And they were able to reach him. Right. That's called coaching.
So is it safe to assume, I would think, that a guy like Nick Sirianni, his offensive philosophy is probably not going to be that different than what Doug Peterson and Frank Reich's offensive philosophy is, a spread offense, a pass-first offense, although they did run.
Spread. I would not call it spread.
You wouldn't call it spread? More West Coast. I'm sorry, West Coast. I meant West
Coast. Well, it was a West Coast spread. The Eagles were 16 and 17. Then they moved to, the terminology is always West Coast.
Right.
Terminology is really not a big deal. But once the Eagles drafted Goddard, they had to because they spent a second-round pick on a guy they thought would replace Ertz, and that's probably going to happen. Mm-hmm. Their thought process at the time, I was told, they're going to be 12 for a while. They'll see where Wentz is when he turns 30. I mean, not Wentz, Ertz. And they'll see if they want to keep him. And here we are. You fast forward, we think he's going to be traded, but we don't know for sure.
Right.
But they're heavy. The Colts are a heavy 12 personnel team because they had so many tight ends. They brought in Philly special guy.
Trey Burton.
Yes, thank you. God, I don't know. This is what happens when you tape when you're exhausted. But I know the characters. I know what I was told. At least I can't remember the goddamn names. But thank you. So they had Mo Alley Cox, who ironically the Eagles like years ago. But with Burton and Jack Doyle,
right,
and they had a bunch of tight ends. Okay, so they're a heavy 12. But the thing is, Paris Campbell was hurt once again, so they couldn't do as much as 11 as they wanted to.
Right.
This coaching source, very close to the situation, told me that Nick will coach the personnel they have. He's not going to crowbar something it doesn't work. He's not going to force it because of the personnel they had. They had to do 12. And now he said, listen, if we had personnel that dictated 11, they're going 11. If they had, Michael Pittman Jr. is their X, T.Y. Hilton's their Z, and if they would have had Paris Campbell this season, he would have been their Y, their slot tight end, slot receiver. But they didn't have him.
Mm-hmm.
So they also have a lot of tight ends. So that's kind of why they did what they did. So he said, Nick is smart enough, and he goes, just know what he knows being around. And this coaching source said, listen, he's going to go with what Philly has, and he'll be smart enough, and he's versatile enough, but his roots are in 12 personnel because of tight ends with Frank in San Diego, tight ends here, but it doesn't mean he can't do 11. If the Eagles do trade Ertz, and then got to get Rager on the field, you got to get all these other receivers on the field. But again, it depends on free agency in the draft, what they do. But the good thing is he has the ability to do both.
Yeah, there's a really good YouTube video out there that features Nick Sirianni and I think a woman who may work for the Colts digital media department. I'm not sure.
Sirianni. You said
what did I say?
Sirianni. You did.
Oh, you bastard! You did
that? I know. I'm an idiot.
Jeez.
It's like it's a virus over the fucking thing.
All right. So Nick Sirianni, and he's breaking down some game film, not of Chargers film, but of random teams. And the first thing he does is break down Zach Ertz's game-winning touchdown or go-ahead touchdown. Yeah, game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And he did speak about how they had tried to incorporate more 12 personnel into their Colts offense and use that touchdown that Zach caught as an example because Zach was lined up in a 1-by-3 formation. The Patriots were in nickel, so he was defended by a safety and he just clearly straight beat the safety with a move to the inside. So
on that, I just want to add the guy to this coaching source did say Nick is really big with matchups. They were big, although I still think Reich didn't use them enough. Nyheim Hines, the former college receiver's running back, they line up him in the slot. How many times did we say 26 Sanders need to line up in the goddamn slot and he didn't?
Oh, probably a million times, no doubt.
How much did it aggravate us?
A lot.
I don't think that's going to happen here based on this guy that I talked to, this coaching source.
Okay.
We'll see, but I'm just telling you.
Well, one thing that I found interesting in that video, Adam, is that right after the Eagles play, he showed a San Diego play, I'm guessing from when he was there, with Terrell Williams catching a crossing route over the middle.
He could run. Oh, he could run.
Yeah, he specifically went out of his way to introduce the play, saying that his philosophy is to try to get the ball in the hands of his best playmakers within that 5 to 10 yards of line of scrimmage.
Jalen Reagor.
Yes, like that. I kept thinking, I'm like, God, that sounds like, Adam and I kept saying, why don't you have plays designed for your
it 100
best
times, man.
Or fastest players that gets the ball into
get him in
hands.
space for Christ's sake. Yes.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. I think it'll be a good thing for maybe it won't be great for Miles Sanders as a slot receiver, but if they want to get the ball in the hands of the best players, it's got to get into the hands of Miles Sanders in the passing game in some form or fashion. And of course, Rager across the middle or just doing whatever they can do. So I was very pleased to hear that. And it does make me intrigued to see what his offense is going to look like. Outside of the X's and O's, I think you and I have heard similar things about his coaching style and that he's energetic and he's a leader. And one source described Sirianni to me as kind of like Doug in his ability to relate to a locker room and get people on board. But he made a mention of saying, but he will coach his coaches, which was like a big, ding, ding, ding.
Oh my God.
Exactly. He said he's not afraid to get into it and the coaches players hard and coaches hard. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. I'm fascinated. I'm hoping we get access to OTAs. I learned so much about Doug's offense, Doug Peterson's offense, and Chip Kelly's. But that's we're gonna reveal some stuff over time that I just gave you some stuff tonight, but I want to see it with my own eyes because that first Chip Kelly OTAs it really was like Star Wars because you're not going to hide stuff from the media. I mean, why would you do that?
Right.
So you could see it. I'm like, it is just like it looked on tape. If you watch the Oregon tape, I'm like, this is really cool because we never see anything like this in the National Football League. Now everyone's doing it, but here. It's going to be multi-formational, a lot of 2 tight end sets, as we said, a lot of 12, with the ability to go 11. And look at my notes here I was dictating to take this stuff down from this guy. Ability to do 12, depending on if they keep Ertz. So I still think Ertz is going to be traded, but can't say it for sure.
Right.
We'll see what they do. If Zach's back, you'd hate to be married to doing, because Doug, I think, felt married to 12 personnel because they had Ertz on the roster. That's just my sense. You should never, no coach should be ever, look, if Ertz isn't good enough and they're stuck with him, or he's on the, I shouldn't say stuck, if he's on the roster and they think he's good enough to be on the roster and not traded, you got to make it work. But you know what? You got to get your best players on the field. And I just felt like we didn't really talk about this before, but I do want to talk about it for a second. I felt that Peterson felt too married to have to do 12 because you know how much 12 they used. Way too much.
Well, I mean, it's only too much if you've got really good wide receivers, and I would say the Eagles' wide receivers were very uneven. But I think 12 also helps you, Adam, when you have upfront protection and you need some extra blocking, which Dallas Goedert is good at.
He's an all-around tight end. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't think Doug wants to play. I think if you ask Doug what's his favorite alignment, he would probably say 11 personnel.
He said 11. He said 11. Yeah. His hints were 11. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an Andy Reid guy. He wants to push the ball down the field. He wants more speed on the field. I just think that the injuries and the situations and the circumstances dictated that they had to have 12. But we'll see. I think you make an interesting point. I think that, maybe there's a chance. People talk about Carson Wentz and whether or not he's coming back. Maybe this does change the fate of Zach Ertz. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Here's the thing with Ertz, though. You have to ask yourself this question for the Eagles. To bring him back, first, we know the biggest problem. We haven't talked about this in a while, but, the contract's an issue, okay?
Yeah.
They were at loggerheads at last check-in in August. They haven't, the last I had heard, they had not talked since August. And it was the 2022 year, which they had a problem. There was no fully guaranteed money in 2022. That was a real problem for Zach and the Eagles because of Goddard. We know the Eagles' history. They like to extend guys early when they're able to. And now legally by NFL rules, they can extend his contract in March. So, we'll see. Actually, before that, they could actually do it now because the season's over technically. So,
right.
So we'll see what happens there. Where else you want to go here?
Well, I want to talk about the hiring process. I mean, unless you have anything more you want to talk about specifically with the qualities of Nick Sirianni. Is there
just a high energy, passionate coach's son, brother coaches, Washington League head coach. You love that. We may have more on him. Who knows in a couple of days here. But just the fan, the reaction is very similar. I would say based on not fans. In particular, it's very similar. They were, oh, really? This is who you're hiring? Well, again, as I said at the top of the show, I got it wrong, man. I didn't see it at all. And heck, I wasn't wrong at 16. After 16, Geoff, he didn't do very well, Doug Peterson.
No, and that's what that makes the whole 5-year Doug Peterson era very difficult to kind of process and how it all went down the hill so quickly. All right, let's get into the hiring process a little bit. But before that, Adam, we want to tell everybody to go check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fan experience with their great coverage and content, covering all of the Philadelphia sports teams like nobody else does. So you can find them on Twitter at phlsportsnation and their great website, phlsportsnation.com. We'll also pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. Okay, let's talk about how this all unfolded a little bit, Adam, because I think this is the part that fans kind of scratch their heads a little bit, and that I mentioned already. He wasn't one of the first guys they interviewed, but he could have been because the Colts were out of the playoffs by the first round. So he kind of just mysteriously popped up in this past week. The whole Lincoln Riley thing didn't work out. That's fine. But do you think people get a sense, though, that feels like a stiff arm. Like the Eagles got turned down by guys. They interviewed the Smiths and the Salas and the who else?
When you say turned down, I don't know that they were offered the job.
Exactly. I wanted to bring that up. You never know if they're offered the job.
Right. Because I see the stuff out there. People like to stick their chests out when they do reporting or they put stuff out there. I mean, I didn't see where this guy was offered a job. Like, I mean, I know in my reporting at 13, more than one coach was offered the job because Chip Kelly turned the job down and they had to look at other guys. Right. And then you saw Kevin Sumlin go on the record saying he was offered the job. Okay, that Chip Kelly first turned down, then obviously Chip came back, so it didn't matter. And I think Kevin, what's the head coach of Notre Dame's? What's his name?
Pat Fitzgerald. Oh, Notre Dame. I'm sorry. Oh my God. Jeez. What is wrong with me today?
Was it Kelly? What's his name?
Brian Kelly. Yes.
Brian Kelly. Yeah. I mean, I think he said he was. So anyway, listen.
We need sleep, brother.
Yeah, but here's the thing. No, I feel actually wide awake. No, it's just that it's been a long day. You and I have been through a lot today. But look, bottom line is this. They talked to a bunch of coaches, way more than I think you and I expected.
Yeah.
Some decided to go elsewhere and not even they chose not to get a second interview if there was going to be one. They decided to take the first offer they got. Okay. You and I have discussed already that the Eagles were very high on Arthur Smith. We never got to see that thing through because within 24 hours after he interviewed with the Eagles, I mean, he took the Falcons job. I mean, I put out there, I don't know, like 8 days ago, I had heard from coaching sources that actually coaching agents that they were told that their guy wasn't getting the Falcons job. Arthur Smith was. I'm like, really? He just interviewed with the Eagles. How's this happening so quickly? That's what happens sometimes.
I believe you also said in that same pod that based on people you spoke to, the league in general viewed Arthur as probably the best overall candidate, right? Yeah. Well, I guess that we'll have to measure Sirianni versus some of these other guys, including Arthur Smith, as it goes. Surely the fans will do that. But
and I learned my lesson when Mike Tomlin got the Vikings job. It was just to go to
Steelers
scrim, but just
right.
It broke down. Something happened. I don't know. This was so many years ago. Tomlin was like so far down on their list to get that Steelers job, and he just blew them away in the interview. Right. His command. You've seen Tomlin. He's awesome.
Oh, God, yeah.
It was over. It was absolutely over. Talking to Steelers source, they were like, oh, my God, get this done. Because when you – listen, they could have been wrong, but it. Joe Banner told us. They knew it. After they interviewed Andy, it was over. I don't know why they had to do to it. Maybe it was over after the second interview. You just know it when you see it. It's like when an actor tries out, Geoff, for a part, and you go, oh, my God, this is George Costanza. This is him. No more. Jason Alexander. He is George Costanza. Don't interview anyone else. And that's what happened.
Right. There you go. So I would say at about, listen, the news broke Thursday, right? I think on Wednesday, you and I were talking independent of the pod, just communicating.
Yeah.
And we were both getting the vibe that Josh McDaniels and Nick Sirianni were really the two candidates at that point.
Was it. Yeah. That was
it. That's what it was really down to. We knew Josh had a very lengthy interview. We knew about his credentials, just like everybody else does. And you made an excellent point in one of the pods of saying, look, you got to do your research here. The baggage that exists with Denver and what happened in Indianapolis. You've got to call around. You got to find out if there's more things. You have to vet this thing. And I've been critical of how the Eagles vet coaches over the last few years because they've had so many in and out. I'm talking about assistant coaches and position coaches and things. So I don't have, I have people who have told me they suspect that in the process of doing research and digging, maybe Jeffrey or Howie did not like what they heard. And there's obviously a sentiment out there, Adam, that McDaniels couldn't come here and realistically get along with Howie and Jeffrey. And you know what? It's fair. Like I said, everything is said is fair. Right?
I got that from a lot of people. Geoff, there's a personnel director I know pretty well. I've gotten to know over the last couple of years, and he I think he knows Howie. I think he's technically a personnel director. These guys have so many different titles, VP of player personnel, right, director of play, whatever the hell it is. But this personnel guy said to me, he goes, are they serious? There's no way Howie will get get along with Josh McDaniels. I'm like, listen, you're not the only person to say that, but
right.
Hey, they brought him in. Apparently, I heard like not only did they get along well, it went real well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know why he didn't get the job. Were they not comfortable overall with some of the information, as you suggested? I couldn't tell you that. But I also know Sirianni blew him away. That team source said to me, Eagles source said, listen, guy was a stud in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. But now he's got a coach. So we're not, as Geoff said at the top here, you're not going to know about this guy for a long time. I know everybody wants instant gratification. It's kind of like when Eagles would try to win free agency early in Roseman's career. More often than not, it would be a total failure because you don't win the National Football League by winning in free agency. You have to win the draft and supplement through free agency.
Right.
There's a way that you have to do it. So winning the press conference, I loved Dan Campbell's was great, but you got to coach.
Was it great? I think people loved Dan Campbell's press conference, but
and not surprising. I've covered. I knew this was coming, and this is the way he is. He literally doesn't give a F.
I know. I just feel like his whole press conference is tailor made for freezing cold takes.
Right. Exactly. Right. I wish him good luck. We'll see. It's all about your staff and your players. So anyway,
right.
Getting back to
not eating kneecaps. You're saying that?
Oh my God,
really...
that was. And he wants to be. Do you know that I've only seen The Big Lebowski once? I know it's. I need to now that this has happened. I need to. I'll watch it this weekend. But
dude,
look, this is not the way as you set it up very well to start the show. I didn't see it going this way. I just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you and I heard Thursday mid morning, I was like, this can't be true. Really? They're not going because we heard it Wednesday. Look, it was before they had processed not Stefanski for Christ's sake, Sirianni.
You've got Caserio, Stefanski.
Right. But they, the way it works generally is you interview, you huddle up, you go over all your information, all the people are involved. And by the way, Don Smolensky, Roseman, Lurie, Jeremiah Washburn, I was told who was involved. Now I don't know how involved, but Andy Weidel, other people who were there in Palm Beach. There are a bunch of people who are involved, but of course, Roseman's voice and Lurie's voice will count the most.
Right.
And as you said earlier, Lurie's had a strong history of being successful with these head coaches. He has not had a bust yet. The only one that you could say semi-bust was Chip Kelly, but he still had 2 winning seasons out of 3.
There you go. I think it's fair to say at this point, now that he's been passed over twice for a head coaching job with the Eagles, and I don't know what the fate now of Deuce Staley is going to be, but he's not ever going to be the Eagles head coach. I mean, if you have him in your building and you promoted him to the point of assistant head coach, and you've had 2 openings to the opportunity to at least interview him and consider him, and you don't give him the job, you're not going to hire Deuce Staley. So I still repeat what you and I said on the last pod. I wish somebody would give him an interview. I wish somebody would give him an opportunity, and I hope he gets it. And it seemed, I can't tell you if his days are going to be over here. Who knows? He has to meet. He is, like you said, under contract, right? And he's got to meet with the coach and figure some things out. But, I mean, a lot of fans wanted to see it. I totally get it. And part of us wanted to see it as well. But I think now we move on to the reality that he's just never going to be the head coach of the Eagles.
Yeah. And I hope, as you said in the show before, and I think it bears repeating, I'm hoping the teams around the National Football League get all those tweets and they use them for next year in the coaching search. Because look at how many players, even Malcolm Jenkins doesn't play for the Eagles anymore. All these veteran players, younger players, older players, show their love for Deuce on Twitter. I mean, they wanted it out there. Listen, we want this guy to be the head coach. I mean, I've not seen that before with any other head coaching candidate. Have you?
Right. No, it was a rare show of support. And I think that actually creates, I don't want to say an obstacle or a challenge for Nick Sirianni, but clearly there was a pull for Deuce in that locker room. And then to have to walk in as the new guy from the outside and convince everybody that you're the guy, it's just you had to do that anyway, but it's a little bit more difficult, I'd say, or there's a sense of awkwardness, especially if Deuce is still on the staff.
Well, yeah. Now, if Sirianni's aware of this, yeah, sure, it's a fair point, man. So he certainly has to. This new head coach has got to go in there and show that he's got the guys' respect, because Doug, I'll tell you what, Doug Peterson's first year was not good for getting this respect from the players. It's when he changed, I'm told, in 2017, particularly in their OTAs, he was harder on the guys.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the players were being fined for their indiscretions, being late and all that stuff. So he changed his attitude because I think he knew a Eagle source who's close to Doug said to me, listen, that 2017 offseason, Doug knew that if he didn't improve, he might not be back in 18. So we know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But he got the memo. Someone either told him or he could get the vibe that he needed to get his bleep together. And he did. And hey, got total. And by the way, the buy-in that Doug had, you've covered this team closer to anyone I've ever talked to who's covered the team.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen I know Andy, people bought in with Andy, but have you seen a buy-in in players loving Doug, like a head coach like Doug?
No, I mean, really, it was Andy-esque. I mean, and Andy was known, especially the later Andy, right? The after 2004 Andy, he was known for having those teams that started off slowly and rallied in November and December. And certainly you saw that from Doug Peterson's team in 2018 and 2019. So it was very, very symmetrical there between the love for Andy, the love for Doug, and not surprisingly them being from this, the mentor and the teacher there. Obviously, it's another thing that Nick Sirianni will have to kind of walk into and win that locker room over. All right, I want to get into, Adam, the potential staff, as I mentioned, Deuce, and what it might look like. First, got to tell everybody that the return we've all been waiting for is finally here. UFC's most notorious icon is stepping back into the octagon this Saturday. Be sure to check out DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the USC, for a shot to turn $1 into $257. That's right. New users can bet $1 on McGregor to win by knockout in the first round. And if he does, you'll be cashing in $257. You bet a little, you win a lot. It's that simple. And while we're all excited for this weekend's premier UFC bout, let's not forget that football's in the midst of their playoffs. So head to the app to check out the great playoff promotions. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, making it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code ITB when you sign up to turn $1 into $257 if McGregor wins by a first-round knockout. Place your bet and watch the fist fly this weekend. And that's code ITB for new players to get $257 if McGregor wins by a first-round knockout for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You must be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. So, all right, let's talk about the staff here.
Yep.
Because I imagine there's going to be a lot of changes, and I know you've spoke to some people, so you may have kind of an idea of some of the things he might do.
Yeah, I mean, he'll evaluate the guys that he's inheriting and then see. And obviously, they've worked this. The guys that are still under contract that obviously do Staley. We talked about a lot of the other Jeff Stoutland, by the way. It's really interesting. I might have mentioned this Wednesday. There've been a lot of conflicting reports, but it's not that these guys got it wrong. It's just that a lot of things have changed with the Alabama thing. The reason why Doug Marrone's going to Alabama is because of his buddy, Bill O'Brien. They're very close, I'm told. So they may get Stoutland back. Okay. They might get Jeff Stoutland back. We'll see. Nothing's official yet. I didn't think there was a prayer in hell that he was coming back, but things have a very weird way of changing in the National Football League with coaches. You just never know.
Absolutely. I think that, well, I know that Jeff Stoutland, just like is someone that the ownership and the management value greatly. Howie and Geoff are big fans of Stoutland. Well, I know Geoff especially is a big fan of Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Lurie is a fan of Jeff Stoutland. So maybe with this new hire,
so is Howie Roseman.
And Howie, yeah, I shouldn't suggest that Howie isn't. I just know that Jeffrey also is a big fan. So
pay him a lot of money. He's a damn good coach.
Exactly. No, and they've promoted him as well. He's not just offensive line coach, he's run game coordinator, and we'll see what kind of titles that he has going forward. But I do agree with you. I think it looks more promising that he's going to be back. And Dave Phipp also, it looks like because they blocked the interview, right? Somebody requested.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, Dave Burkett. Yeah, how about that one?
Right, the Lions. That's right. They wanted an interview. So that to me also shows, though, Adam, that, the people who say that this hire is because, Geoff and Howie still want to have some kind of control and be able to have their holdover coaches or whatever. I mean, I don't know. These guys have been good coaches. Stoutland's certainly been a good coach. Phipp had a bad year, but was a good coach when Chip Kelly brought him in, and they had some really good special teams here. So, but it does give that impression. So the optics are, there's still people at the top who are, you hired a guy who you can still put your coaches onto.
Exactly. And understand that a good organization does not let good coaches go without a fight, especially if they're under contract. And they did a smart thing. Like literally, it was either right after Kelly was fired, Stoutland, I know for a fact, extended his contract before any college team could get him. That was smart. Like that's just, look, they took a gamble knowing they knew Deuce, so that was not a gamble. But they like what they saw from Stoutland for the, I guess, 3 years that they had him under Chip. They said, you know what, we've seen enough for 3 years. This guy's really good. We're gonna take a small gamble here and make sure it's gonna work with Peterson. Home run. Couldn't have done a better job there. Tight ends coach. Okay. They did a good job keeping him from Chip's staff. Justin Peel. They another guy, young. Now he was really green when he joined Chip's staff. He just retired, and they got that one right. If you look at Deuce, is an obvious home run. Right. If you look at a majority of those coaches, even Press Taylor, though in the end it didn't work out that well, he was on Chip's staff and he did some good work, but unfortunately the head coach put him in a position where it just didn't work.
Right.
But overall, most of those holdovers did a good job. So that's what you got to do. But here's what I got on. I know because I got a million questions on this. So according to coaching sources, here's what I got. We're going to call these coaching targets because these guys are under contract, and the new head coach will have to work it out. And I'm going to explain why, according to sources, these guys are on the list. Shane Steichen, the OC of the Chargers, did a phenomenal job under really trying circumstances with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert basically is, to me, depending on which poll you look at, I voted for him as Offensive Rookie of the Year in the two polls that I voted in. Steichen did a phenomenal job. No offseason, no 2.5 weeks of training camp, no preseason. I mean, he just doesn't get any better than that. Steichen coached with Sirianni with the Chargers, but Steichen's under contract. No, I don't know yet, and I was efforting on Thursday night to find out whether Steichen's going to remain. I mean, right now he's still on their staff, but will he remain with the new head coach, Brandon Staley, with the Chargers? So we'll see what happens there. But that's one potential coaching target to come on. Obviously, he's not going to leave there. I mean, I don't know why the hell they would let him walk. I can't imagine one reason, Geoff, they would let him walk.
Right.
But if he does, the sources I spoke with think that there'll be a target as his OC. I'm going to give you another one. This one's really interesting. Tom Manning, the offensive coordinator for Iowa State, was with the Colts for one season. He is the OC at Iowa State, could coach tight ends, running backs, really good coach. This one source says he expects him to be a target. Just a matter of, because he was in the NFL only for one season and went back to Iowa State. He coaches for Matt Campbell, obviously. They've been together. He was with Campbell at Mount Union and here at Iowa State. We'll see if he decides to want to leave, but one source thinks he'll be a target because he's a really good coach and he understands what Sirianni will want in terms of concepts and coaching style and positional coaching as well. Give another one. Now it's first current Colt coaches. Kevin Patullo is a pass game specialist with the Colts. He's also coached receivers. He's a guy that I'm told that Sirianni really leaned on, according to a Colts source this season. He's also under contract. So we'll see what Frank Reich does, or if he lets him out, or if Sirianni targets him. But people I spoke with think he'll be a target. So those three coaches, plus potentially Jason Michael, who's the tight ends coach for the Colts, who's coached quarterbacks before. The two men know each other pretty well, one Colts source said. So those are some potential coaching sources, and we've got a couple more we've not confirmed yet. If I hear that they're potential targets, we'll put them on our next show, or I'll probably tweet them.
Right.
But that's what I got on the coaching staff.
All right. So, I mean, obviously, as you would expect, some Chargers.
Again, they're not hired. I'm saying potential targets. People, get it right if you're going to quote me. I cannot stand when people don't get it right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
As you would expect, some Chargers and some Colts connections, because those are the two. Well, he's worked for 3 organizations, but Kansas City has been a while back, so I don't know. He came up through
Speaking of that, I do want to mention this because this is what one Colts source said is going to happen with the offense. He's going to blend Reich and Brian Daboll. I didn't even know they worked together, but this really strong Colts source told me, "Oh yeah, Dave's worked with him with the Chiefs. Don't you remember?" I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't," but I didn't know because he was so young in his coaching career. He goes, "Oh yeah, absolutely. He's a mentor for him. He's going to take some of those concepts." I'm like, "All right, thank you. That's 2 tight ends. I get it."
There you go.
Well, it used to be 2 tight ends, but because the Bills now they're actually a 4 receiver team sometimes.
Yeah.
He's changed. Daboll's complete. He used to be all 2 tight ends, mostly 2 tight ends, and now he's 3 and there are 11 and 10 personnel because of personnel. That's what they have, so that's what they go with.
Yeah.
But Daboll's roots were in 2 tight ends and just multi-formational tight end usage is what the source said. So that's what I got.
All right, let's finish off this pod. Just kind of talking about the situation that he inherits here. 4-win team is normally bad, but he's not Urban Meyer being tasked to take this Jacksonville Jaguar team and completely rebuild it with the number 1 pick quarterback and everything. I feel like this is a little bit more. I think he's actually got a more talented team than Doug inherited, because Doug had no wide receivers. Right. He had Sam Bradford, who had a losing record as a quarterback. And then, of course, he had Carson Wentz waiting in the wings, and that got accelerated. But he had probably better players on defense than offense. I think Doug also inherited a running back committee at the time that was Ryan Matthews, and I want to say who else ran the ball for them that year?
It was really bad. It was Smallwood.
Matthews.
It was Ryan Matthews who wound up getting hurt. Darren Sproles, Kenyon Barner, they brought in.
Yeah.
And you remember, this is how Geoff makes such a great point, because I totally forgot about this. You ready for this one? Who do you think were their receivers?
I know who they were.
Week 1, without looking. This is unbelievable.
It was Nelson Aguilar. It was Dorial Green Beckham. It was Paul Turner, and
actually Paul Turner was not on the.
No, he wasn't on team yet. He was all right. But it was Jordan Matthews. So Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar, and Dorial.
Josh Huff, and a guy who's now an agent. This is a great trivia.
Oh, Bryce Treggs.
Done. Good job.
Wow.
Good job out of you.
That's terrible. I mean,
Bryce, if you're listening, we just gave you a shout out.
That's right.
That's right. That's why you nailed it. Because other than Matthews was pretty good. But other than that,
but he was always hurt, and he was hurt that year too.
Well, no, was he hurt in 16? 16 was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was. Yeah.
I know he had a high ankle sprain one of the years. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But Doug's first year, and it was towards the tail end of Brent Selleck. Obviously, we know he had one more year in 17, and Zach was a stud then. Zach Ertz and Trey Burton. Look, they were a mess. It was Wentz his first. Although Wentz had a good rookie year for rookie standards, he still wasn't a stud yet.
Right.
Defensively, Graham, Cox, Benny Logan was still a good player then.
Oh, definitely. I liked Benny Logan.
Bradham was good. Hicks was a stud in 15.
Yep.
Kendricks is still there, but remember how bad their corners were?
No. Well, I mean, not much has changed really, but I mean, they.
But Kelvin. Nolan Carroll, they later moved to state. Ron Brooks, who blew his knee out and was never heard from again.
Yeah, it was like everybody who played for Buffalo at one point was Kelvin and Brooks and Nigel Bradham and things like that. So, but look, remember what Chip Kelly walked into after Andy got fired. He walked into a much better situation, right? He walked into, at least he had Michael Vick and Foles, and he had Shady, and he had Deshaun, and he had Macklin. Like, he had a legit offense, so he was able to hit the ground running. You remember that first game against Washington where they just steamrolled Washington at the time. So I feel like, Nick Sirianni does come into a team that has a lot of question marks, but they're not completely devoid of talent.
I'll tell you what, right? If they use the personnel correctly, okay. Before we get out of here, this is what you're looking at most likely heading in. Well, we don't know what free agency will look like, but right now, if they had to start the season, I'm removing Jeffery and Jackson. That's obvious. Rager, who's should be a good Z for them. Ward right now is their slot receiver, but they need someone who's more explosive. Even if they move Rager to the slot only, he could be a great vertical slot, but right now he's their Z. Fulgham, you can't trust him as your X. You just can't. We just can't. He's got, for whatever reason, he fell off Part of it is not consistent in practice, we were told.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to be better, but right now he cannot be their true X. I mean, he can't be their number one X, so you need to draft someone or add somebody. It's going to be their starting tight end one way or the other. If Ertz is there, which would be a surprise to me, he'll be involved. Sanders is their stud running back. Yep. They don't have a 2 and they don't have a 3. Boston Scott, period, end of story, is not a 2.
No.
That cannot happen again.
And remember, he's going to inherit a pretty decent offensive line. Brandon Brooks.
If they're healthy. One more nugget.
Yeah.
Lane Johnson, I'm told, doing great in rehab.
Good.
Either he's off the motor scooter or very soon is going to be off of it and feels great. The ankle feels like new. Whatever they did to this, what did he call it? A shattered ankle? What did he say?
I can't even
whatever phrasing used I had not heard before describe an ankle.
Right.
His ankle collapsed. Well, it's
it collapsed.
Right, apparently it's doing real well, so that's good news. You got Mailata, as you said. Sayamalo is a good, solid football player. Mm-hmm. Herbig was a nice surprise to them. He's clearly not a starter, but a good spot starter. He's shown he can be a good backup. Mailata looks like he's got a chance to be a star. They're going to get Dillard back. We'll see what they do with him, whether it's a competition at left tackle. So just right. They've got some pieces here if these guys could stay on the field.
There you go. All right, so he walks into a good situation. Last thing I'll leave you with, look, I think this hiring, and we won't be able to have this conversation for quite a while, but it's going to become a referendum on Jeffrey and did he make the right decision here with Doug, and does he know what he's doing with hiring, or did he just get lucky with Andy, and we'll see. So
lucky with Doug, totally lucky
both.
With Doug.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so we'll see if it happens again, but it becomes a referendum on the whole process that's been going on. So we'll have to see. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's a conversation for down the road. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. A big thank you to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check him out on YouTube. His channel is called Sports Talk with Broads, and check him out on Twitter at Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.